A summer job. That's it. That's what it took. In 1960, a young man or woman could work through the summer, pumping gas, waiting tables, working a factory line, picking fruit, and earn enough to pay for an entire year of college. Tuition, room, board, books, all of it, paid for, in cash, with no debt at the end of it. Today, the average American student graduates owing tens of thousands of dollars and carries that debt into their 30s, their 40s, sometimes their 50s. It shapes when they marry, whether they have children, whether they can ever buy a house. Same country, 60 years apart. What in the world happened? Today, we're going to do the actual math. What college really cost in 1960, what students actually earned, and then the uncomfortable part, exactly how and why that arrangement was dismantled. I'll be honest with you, some of this made me genuinely angry while I was researching it. Let's go. Let's start with the number, because the number is the whole story. In 1960, tuition at a public 4-year university in America averaged in the low hundreds of dollars per year. Not thousands, hundreds. Add room and board, and the total cost of attending a state school for a full year came to somewhere in the neighborhood of $1,000, give or take, depending on the state and the school. Now, what did a summer job pay? Minimum wage at the time was $1 an hour. A student working full-time through the summer, say 40 hours a week for 3 months, earned somewhere around $500 at minimum wage. Working a better job, in a factory or on a construction crew at $2 an hour, that same summer brought in around $1,000. Do the arithmetic. A single summer of full-time work covered most, or all, of a year of state college. And if a student also worked part-time during the school year, a few evening shifts, a campus job, the whole thing was covered comfortably. That's not a rosy legend, that's the arithmetic. A middle-class kid, and plenty of working-class kids, could work their way through school and walk out the other side owing nobody anything. What about the elite schools? Even those were within reach in a way that seems fictional now. Tuition at the most prestigious private universities in the country ran somewhere in the range of $1,000 to $1,500 a year. Expensive, certainly. A stretch for a middle-class family. But we're talking about a number that a family could realistically save for, or that a scholarship and a job could cover. Not a number requiring a second mortgage and a decade of repayment. Let me put it in the plainest possible terms. In 1960, the total yearly cost of attending an Ivy League university was roughly a quarter of what the average American family earned in a year. Today, the yearly cost of many private universities is close to, or exceeds, the entire median household income. The whole thing, everything a family earns in a year, for 1 year of one child's education. That's the change. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. So why was it so cheap? This is the part that matters, because it wasn't an accident, and it wasn't magic. It was a choice. After the Second World War, America made a series of deliberate decisions about higher education. The GI Bill sent millions of returning veterans to college on the public dime, men who never would have set foot on a campus otherwise. And it worked spectacularly. Those veterans became engineers, teachers, doctors, businessmen. The economy exploded. The investment paid for itself many times over. And then states doubled down. State legislatures funded their public universities generously, covering the large majority of the actual cost of educating each student. Tuition wasn't the price of your education. Tuition was a small contribution on top of what the public had already paid, because the public had decided that an educated citizenry was a public good, like roads, like water, like the fire department. Some states went further and charged almost nothing at all. California built a public university system that was, for residents, essentially free. No tuition, just modest fees. And it produced one of the most educated, most innovative populations on Earth. That was the deal. Society pays to educate its young people. The young people go out and build things, cure things, teach things. Everyone gets richer. It's not charity. It's an investment with an obvious return. So, what happened? 3 things, and they compound. First, the public money got pooled. Over the following decades, state after state cut per-student funding for public universities. When the state pays less, the university makes up the difference by charging students more. That's the entire mechanism. It isn't complicated. The cost didn't magically appear. It got transferred, quietly, from the public purse to the student's back. Second, the loans arrived, and the loans changed everything. Once easy federal student lending was widely available, a strange thing happened. Universities discovered they could raise prices and students would still come, because the students could now borrow. The price ceiling was no longer what a family could afford, it was what a lender would approve. And a lender will approve an awful lot when the loan is guaranteed. There's serious argument among economists about how big this effect is, and I won't pretend it's settled. But the basic dynamic is hard to deny. When you give buyers unlimited credit for a thing they desperately need and cannot substitute, the price of that thing does not go down. Third, the universities themselves changed. Administrative staff grew enormously, far faster than faculty. Campuses invested in amenities, gyms that looked like resorts, dining halls with a dozen options, buildings with donor names on them. Some of that spending is defensible. Some of it is an arms race between institutions competing for students who are, by then, price insensitive. Because they're not paying now, they're borrowing. Put those three together, and you get a machine. The public stops paying, students borrow to fill the gap, universities spend more because students can borrow, and prices climb, so students borrow more. Around and around, and every cycle, the debt gets heavier. Now, the part that's hardest to talk about honestly, the debt itself. Student loans in America have a feature that almost no other consumer debt has. They follow you nearly forever. They're extremely difficult to discharge in bankruptcy. You can lose your house, your car, your business, but that education debt stays attached to you, and it grows. Think about what that does to a young person's life. You graduate at 22, owing $30,000, $40,000, $50,000. That's a mortgage payment every month before you've bought anything. So you delay. Delay marriage, delay children, delay the house, delay the risk of starting a business or taking the low-paying job you actually love. We took the most economically ambitious moment in a person's life, the years when they should be starting things, and we attached an anchor to it. And then we act baffled when young people aren't buying houses and having kids. Let's fill in the picture of what going to college actually looked like then, because the experience itself tells you a lot about the cost. The dorm room was small, plain, and shared. 2 beds, 2 desks, a window, a radiator that clanked. No air conditioning. No private bathroom, you walk down the hall. There was no television in the room, no refrigerator, no microwave, and certainly no climbing wall in a $50 million recreation center across campus. The building was built to house students, not to impress them on a campus tour. Meals were served in a dining hall, on a tray, and you ate what they made. Not 8 themed food stations, not a sushi bar. Food. Books were bought used, from older students, and sold again at the end of the term. There was no $500 textbook with a code inside that expires after 1 semester, a business model so shameless that I genuinely struggled to describe it without swearing. Tuition bought instruction. That was the product. You paid for professors, classrooms, a library, and a piece of paper at the end. Everything else was considered somebody else's business. Now, I want to be careful here because kids today have it too nice is a lazy argument, and I don't fully buy it. Students didn't demand most of these amenities out of thin air. Universities built them to compete with each other for enrollment, and then handed students the bill. It's not that this generation is soft, it's that they're being sold a resort experience they never asked for, and are then blamed for the cost of it. Let's also talk about who was working, because the summer job wasn't a quaint tradition, it was normal, and it was hard. Students worked construction, they worked in canneries and packing plants. They waited tables, they hauled freight, they worked night shifts in factories. They detasseled corn in the sun. It wasn't easy money, and nobody pretended it was. But here's the crucial thing. It was enough. The work was hard, and the reward was proportionate. You put in a summer, you got a year of education. Today, a student can work that exact same summer, just as hard, and cover maybe a fraction of one semester. The work didn't get easier. The exchange rate collapsed, and when a young person says the system is unfair, they are not complaining about labor, they are pointing at arithmetic. There's one more piece I have to mention, and it's the one that makes people angriest when they learn it: the wage side. Since 1960, the cost of college has risen dramatically faster than wages. That's the whole trap in one sentence. It isn't that everything went up together. If wages and tuition had risen at the same rate, that summer job would still work. Instead, tuition sprinted and wages walked. So the modern student is asked to buy something that costs many times more, using an hour of labor that's worth roughly the same. There is no budgeting advice, no avocado toast lecture, no side hustle that closes that gap. The gap is structural, and pretending otherwise is an insult to anyone doing the math. And a note on what this did to the family. In 1960, parents of modest means could plan for college. They could save for it in a savings account at a knowable amount and get there. Today, parents borrow against their homes, grandparents dip into retirement, parents co-sign loans that follow them into old age. An entire family's finances now bend around the education of one child in a way that would have been unthinkable to a family in 1960. Not because they loved their children less, but because the number was reachable. Now let me be honest about the other side, because a fair accounting demands it. That cheap 1960 college was not open to everyone, not remotely. It served a far smaller slice of the population. Only a modest fraction of Americans attended college at all. It was overwhelmingly white and overwhelmingly male at the higher levels. Black students were excluded from many institutions outright. Women were steered away from entire fields. The system was cheap, partly because it was small and exclusive. Today's system is vastly more inclusive. Far more Americans go to college, from far more backgrounds. That's real progress, and it should not be dismissed. Some of the added cost is genuinely the cost of educating far more people, with far more support services, in far more fields. But, and this is the crucial but, mass access and crushing debt were not a package deal. They didn't have to come together. A country can educate a large fraction of its young people at reasonable public cost. Several countries do exactly that right now. We chose a different route. We expanded access and simultaneously withdrew the public funding. And we bridged the gap with debt, and then we told each individual student it was their private problem. That was a choice, not a law of nature. Here's what strikes me most about all of this. In 1960, we treated education as an investment in the country. Today, we treat it as a purchase made by an individual, a consumer buying a product, financing it like a car. And the moment you make that switch, everything follows. The marketing, the amenities, the pricing power, the debt. The kid working the summer job in 1960 was not being subsidized out of kindness. The country was buying something it wanted: engineers, teachers, chemists, accountants. And it got them, in enormous numbers, and the return was staggering. So what did that summer job really buy? It bought a young person a start with no chains attached. It bought a country a generation of skilled workers, who then went out and built the very prosperity we're now nostalgic about. We didn't lose that because of an economic law, or inflation, or bad luck. We stopped paying for it, and we handed the bill to the students, one at a time, quietly, over about 40 years, and hardly anybody noticed until the debt was in the trillions. Now tell me your story, because I want to hear it. What did your college cost? What year, what school, and what did you do to pay for it? Did you work your way through? Are you still paying? And if you have children or grandchildren, what are they facing now? Put it in the comments with the numbers. Because 1,000 real receipts from real people tell this story better than any statistic I could read you. Until next time, take care of yourselves.